gonna be a little something more. I've got a plan in mind, a special thing in store. The light bulb inside my head says, get out and play, 'cause you never feel this way. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day. It's my lucky day, my lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold, a rabbit's foot or to be told. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day.
Hello, happy Tuesday and welcome. I am so glad you are here. And I am so glad to have my friend Jenn with me. But Jenn, before I introduce you, could you see the intro video or was it that one picture for the entire frame?
No, I did see a video and music and all the good.
Okay. And like the
good
video progressed through it?
Yes, it
Okay.
did.
On my screen, it was just like the girl waking up. And then she was like this for the whole song. So
Oh, no, I saw it.
all right, cool. It was one of those things. I was like, should I stop it and start again? Would that be weird? But now that I've just made this totally weird, hi, let's have a do-over. Happy Tuesday. I'm so glad you're here. If you are joining us, I'd love it if you would drop a comment in the chat. Let us know you're here. We'd love to be able to say hello. Also, caveat, sometimes Restream is a little funky and sometimes it doesn't want to play nice with the comments. So if by chance we don't see you and acknowledge you, we are not ignoring you. It's just a technology glitch. So my friend Jenn, this is Jenn Espinosa-Goswami. She is an ICF certified public speaking coach and founder of Weightless LLC, a former Toastmasters International officer and a graduate of the Masters of Leadership program at Augsburg University. Jenn helps entrepreneurs speak more clearly and confidently behind a microphone. A finalist for Coach of the Year from the International Association of Women in 2022, Jenn is an international speaker who has presented to executives, leaders, managers, and entrepreneurs over the past decade. She has served in multiple nonprofit boards in her home state of Minnesota, and prior to starting her company, Jenn served as a certified fraud examiner for 16 years within Fortune 500 financial companies. So Jenn, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm glad to be here. And I even brought my journals with me because I'm super excited to go past my history and take a look at some of the things I used to journal about.
Awesome. Oh, I love that. So I would love to start with just getting a sense of who you are so people watching can know who you are. What should we know about you and what's your story that leads up to what you do now?
Well, my story started being the youngest of 4 kids. So you can imagine I got in trouble if I spoke up as a kid because, you don't nag on your older siblings. And I was morbidly obese as well. And growing up in the 80s, not a lot of kids in my school were also obese, not to the extent that I was. Lots of kids had a few extra pounds. I was easily the largest person in my school. So between being the youngest in my family and being the biggest person in my entire school, practically, I kept really, really quiet. I didn't want to speak up. The only time I spoke up was in class because I was a very good student. Some called me a teacher's pet. Again, another reason for me not to bring attention to myself. But at one point, I just got the bug for public speaking. I was at Toastmasters International, one of my favorite organizations. And some of you listening may have participated or currently participate in Toastmasters. It changed my life. I met many people through Toastmasters that helped me see that speaking is not just something you work on or try to get more confident on. It is also something that could turn into a career path. So when my career kind of took a little turn for the worse and I'm like, I don't want to do financial services anymore, what can I do? And I sank into my skill set of I'm a great speaker, I'm a great listener, and I don't have a problem being on stage in front of people. So maybe, and I had that at that time lost 100 pounds. So I said, well, I have a personal story as well. Why don't I combine these things into something that I can make a career out of, which is where we are today.
That is such an incredible story. And I think it's so fascinating that I'm thinking about you as a child, right? As the youngest, and being uncomfortable in your skin just makes us smaller, right? Like when we're not confident in who we are, it's so much harder to find our voice. So what led you to finding Toastmasters? How did you get there?
Oh, my manager made me do it. Those professional development kinds of things where you're in your performance review with your manager and they're like, yeah, you have to do something different outside of this department. And I looked around at what was available. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do this course. I don't want to do that program. I wasn't ready for certification at that time, but there was a local Toastmasters group on my campus for my company. So they had a lunchtime meeting and I said, well, I did a lot of speaking in school for my bachelor's degree, and later on, I went for a master's degree as well, and I spoke in every single class. But educational speaking is very different from business or personal speaking. So I said, well, this is something I could get better on. And I was already writing for my job, and we'll talk about writing in a little bit. But I'm like, I need to express myself in a different way. And so Toastmasters seemed like the perfect outlet for that.
Very cool. So for people who don't know what Toastmasters is, can you give us a quick primer?
Yeah, Toastmasters is an international public speaking and leadership development association. It's nonprofit. It's very low cost to attend. They sometimes have company sponsored ones and often have thousands of clubs in your local area, everywhere from early morning people to lunchtime meetings to after everyone's had dinner and is going home for the evening. And so, one thing that you may not know about Toastmasters is people who are already good at speaking will often join Toastmasters as well, like trainers, learning and development professionals, mostly because it's a skill that never goes away. It's a skill that keeps on giving. And even if you feel that you're confident with it, you can always improve your technique. So, Toastmasters will help you with not just the technique piece of delivery, but also, attuning to your audience, which is a skill set we don't learn in school. I certainly didn't learn it. And I'm a former debate person. I used to be on the debate team. I used to be in Future Business Leaders of America. They don't teach you the elements of engaging and interacting with your audience.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to school and the little bit of public speaking that I had to do. Um, and I remember going through how to write a speech or how to prepare your stuff. But then it was like, okay, now go do it. And we didn't have training on here's how you stand, here's what you do with your body, here's what you do with your voice. It was just like go up in front of the room and hope you don't die of embarrassment.
Actually, one of the classes that really inspired me to get outside of my comfort zone was my creative writing class when I was a junior in high school, because not only did we write our own articles and short stories and whatever, but every Friday there was an open mic where we could speak our writing in front of the class. And every single week I stood up in front of my class. Sometimes we had a chair and we could be behind a lectern, but I shared my creative writing with everyone, which was the first time I had ever done something that for me it felt very scary and it felt like I was really exposed and vulnerable. So I think that was the biggest challenge I had in high school. I was fine with debate. I can argue through the roof with anyone, anytime, anywhere. I did it with my dad all the time. But creative writing was more of a heartfelt kind of, I'm taking this from inside of me and I'm sharing something that I've never shared with anyone else. And I've had a long association with journaling, but I never used to share that. So I think that was the really important piece for me that transitioned into I can take this writing and do something else with it other than just keep it to myself.
And that sounds a whole lot like what so many of us do on LinkedIn every day, right? Show up and share those stories. It's like the written equivalent of an open mic, right? Like here's your platform. What do you have to say? So I love that you did that. I remember taking not a public speaking, a creative writing class through adult education. I don't know, some years after I graduated through high school, or graduated from high school, then college. I was doing adult education, and I was like, I don't mind the writing part, but it's the reading out loud that was always really the sticky point for me, because I'd hear what everybody else shared and I'd be like, oh, hers is really good. Mine isn't that good. I'm thinking about this one time we had to write a piece about um, like an object and make it sound like it was from the object's point of view. And this one girl wrote from the perspective of a knife. And like it was clever, it was witty, like she had names for all the characters, right? They were like Jack and Mac and, you know, all the other kind of knives there are. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, mine in comparison is like, ooh, it's so dull. I wrote about a mailbox. But when I took a step back to think about it, and as I reflect on it now, what I wrote was so authentically me. So what you said about being vulnerable, right? Getting up there and sharing, even though it wasn't about me, it was all about me, you know, and how I felt and what I thought, even as I personified the, you know, the mailbox just sitting there lonely, waiting for the postman to deliver a letter. It was really me. Like I wish I could find it. It's probably in a box somewhere. I'm curious to see how similar to some of my journal entries it really was.
Yeah, one of the stories I kept on writing throughout high school that I still haven't shared, so I guess this is my debut of that story. My main character was actually a non-binary person that went by the pronoun of ZHE, and this was back in the 80s and 90s when such things were not, as far as I know, weren't around or talked about, certainly not in my circle. So I just think it's really interesting that now that's a part of the normal conversations around me these days about non-binary individuals. And that was my main character for this story that I wrote. And the story had to do with a lot of magical elements and things of that nature. But it's so fun when you write something unexpected, like you wrote about a mailbox, and you're like, well, really, it's all about me. I don't think that my non-binary main character was about me, but definitely the heroine of the story, the one with the magical elements, was definitely a little bit about me.
I love that. So I want to bring this up. This is Mariah saying Toastmasters is a great group. Really helped me 25 years ago when I went. So, Mariah, thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing that. Really glad that you're here. Really glad Toastmasters is helpful for you. All right. So you said that when you went to Toastmasters, you not only became a better speaker, but it really opened your eyes to speaking as like a career or a way forward. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so there are career Toastmasters, and Mariah, I'm not sure if you're one of these, but people who join Toastmasters and pretty much never leave. They just love the community, they love the support. You get feedback and evaluation every time. So those are career Toastmasters. And they don't want to take it anywhere beyond Toastmasters. They want to keep it within the organization. But then there are also people who turn into professional speakers. And so I was lucky to have people within my group. Eventually, I shifted groups. So I didn't just stay with that particular company group because I left that company, but I found other Toastmaster groups. And that's where I found my speaker mentor, Vitalia. Vitalia Bryn Pundik is her name, and she was a National Speakers Association graduate. They had their own program called Speaker Academy, but she took what she learned from that program and she created her own version of an academy teaching the business side of speaking. And so that's something that you don't get within Toastmasters. Toastmasters is great if you have a 5 to 7 minute, if you want to prepare something. Some Toastmaster groups allow you to do a 10 to 15-minute speech. But when it comes to a business presentation, you need to have at least 45 to 60 minutes for a fully conceived, well-structured, well-formatted presentation. And so Vitalia offered that. So we worked upon my signature speech, which I talk about all the time today. And then we also, it was a very small group of us, so it was very intimate. We also worked on the business side of speaking, which from reviews and evaluations I heard from other people, the National Speakers Association Academy focused just on the speech side. They didn't mentorship from current professional speakers, but it didn't really tell you how to structure a speaking business. And when I opened Waitlist, which is my company, it was supposed to be a professional speaking company. The health coaching just came because my audiences heard my story and wanted to learn how to implement what I talked about. But really, in my heart of hearts, my company is all about professional speaking.
I love that so much. And what came to mind as you were saying that is 5 to 7 minutes for a lot of us feels like a really long time to be center stage. Um, 45 minutes to 60 minutes. I feel like there are probably people listening who are sweating at the thought of that. Can you talk about that for a minute and what it was like for you to go from, talking these little bits to this big speech?
Yeah, that's the hardest part, and in the client work I do with folks like coaches and consultants is editing. So you have to be really ruthless with your editing. It's easier to take a 60-minute presentation and chunk it down to like 10 minutes or chunk it down to 5 minutes even. 1 minute is the most challenging amount of time you could possibly do a speech because you have to like begin, middle, end, and then make it all flow together. That's actually the hardest. When it comes to a 60-minute presentation, which is typical for a speech, like any sort of business presentation or TED Talk, TED Talks are usually 20 minutes long, but you can start from a 60-minute standpoint and then chunk it down. It's really difficult. It's not difficult to find the content. And this is one of the things that a lot of people have misinformation around. They're like, what can you talk about for 45 minutes with no preparation? I hear that question a million times a day. That's not the purpose of a signature speech. The signature speech is a well thought out, carefully crafted, memorized, if not internalized presentation. So that's the harder part, is just settling on just one topic. Because I know, Amanda, I'm sure you feel this way as well. There are so many things you could talk about. There are so many things you're passionate about. There are things that you have expertise in, and trying to find the single lane that you're going to stick to is the most challenging part of it. Once you do, though, you develop a brand around your story, whatever that looks like. And then that way you can consistently deliver an amazing program in front of different audiences because you know where what your foundational pieces are, and you can always slice and dice as you go, but start from that core foundation with a speech, and the rest is easy.
Uh, I'm thinking about the storytelling aspect of it, because a good speech, right, a good talk is all it's all about stories and telling stories. And it reminds me of a storytelling workshop that I put together a number of years ago for work. In my 9 to 5, I'm a librarian, and we were talking about how we could help our children's librarians and librarians in general just be better storytellers. So we brought in this award-winning storyteller who's local to us and did this like 4-week intensive. And it was really interesting because she started with everybody can tell stories. You already tell stories. You will come home from, your day at work and you sit around the dining room table with your family, you're going to be telling stories. It's just how we turn those anecdotes into like a full on story. And it's it's interesting to me, my history of public speaking when I think about it, because for so long I have um, been much more comfortable on a stage in front of a large audience of people I don't know than a small audience of people close to me. Have you heard that from other people or
Well, that's
something
how I
similar?
personally feel. I would rather speak to complete strangers. I don't care how big the size of the audience is, than just a few people I know. Totally with you on that one.
Yeah, it's so weird. I'm not sure where it comes from. Maybe it's because strangers I'm not going to probably see again. So if they don't like me, that's fine.
It's kind of funny though, because your friends are going to like you no matter what.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't mess up in front of your friends, but maybe you feel, I know this is what comes up for me when speaking in front of friends is I don't often talk about that side of my life with my friends because we talk about family, we talk about where we met, we talk about, popular topics like Taylor Swift or whatever. And so I don't often share business messaging with my friends and family. So I think that's where the inhibition is for me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then we've got our friend Mary who's listening, said she's the opposite. So
Oh.
she would rather talk to a small group of close people than, a big group of strangers. And Mariah, yeah, I love libraries. They're magical spaces with magical people. And I don't just say that because I'm a librarian. And Charlonda, librarians are good resources. Absolutely. So I would love to hear, Jen, do you have a couple favorite favorite stories about experiences you had speaking, or a couple of speaking engagements that really stand out to you as like, oh my gosh, these were like the best, and you're laughing. So you probably have many.
I have many. Let me think of the order in which. So, most recent one is one where I actually got trolled. It happens, but it was a Zoom workshop. So I was hosting this workshop for an international audience as part of International Coaching Week. I'm a member of International Coaching Federation, and they give this opportunity for people within the organization to offer workshops. So it was a free workshop I was offering, all on how to grow your business through public speaking. And about 10-15 minutes in, I was in my flow. I'm like, I'm doing things a little differently. This is feeling great. I had so much engagement in my chat. Things were looking good. I look into the chat and I see, ooh, this is a big sales fest. And I was like, what? Because to that point, I had not sold anything. I had mentioned certain things. And one of the processes I teach people is seeding your programs and your offers so that people don't get surprised when you get to the end of your presentation. And you're like, by the way, if you'd like to go deeper, here's what I have for you. I don't want people to stuff all of that at the end of the last 5 minutes of their presentation and then say, oh, we're out of time. That's not the best way to handle that. So I was shocked that this gentleman, out of nowhere, he signed up for this free webinar with me, and obviously he was interested in the content, just totally trolled me in my chat log. And I'm just like, why is he sticking around? I was actually speechless for a few minutes, which is hard to do. Maybe not a few minutes. It feels like a few minutes. It was probably 15 seconds. And I struggled with myself, Amanda. I was like, should I respond to this guy, or should I just pretend it never happened? And you'll have those moments. Another moment where that happened for me, and I'll tell you how that story ended in just a moment. Another moment that surprised me was at a live audience. I was speaking for a group of Taking Off Pounds Sensibly, which is a weight loss group, because I started as a health coach. And I was doing one of my favorite presentations, 3 mindset shifts to accelerate your health. I delivered it at least a dozen times before that. So I knew what my audience usually reacted to. But at one point, I looked up in my front row audience, and there was this woman up front. Tears were just rolling down her face. And I paused because I'm like, oh, she's going through something really intense right now. Gave her a nod, just continued doing my presentation. I did go up to her afterwards and just checked in with her to see how she was doing. That is one of the beauties and the humbling moments of speaking, is you don't know how your audience is going to react to you. You could plan perfectly, you could prepare perfectly. Technology will fail. People will have a strong reaction, whether it's positive or negative. And you just have to kind of roll with it. And being the coach that I am, I'm very connected to what my audience is experiencing. I never anticipated that sometimes there would be this negative response, and you kind of have to acknowledge it as it's happening or not, and then move on and do what you need to do as a speaker to say, it had nothing to do with me. It was whatever that person was feeling, and that shows that my message was resonating on a different level than I had thought it would.
So let's talk about reading your audience a little bit, because I do so much better, and I'm sure other people feel the same way, when we get some communication. I'm that person in the audience who's making eye contact, who's nodding, who's smiling, who's like, oh yeah, I'm with you, right? Like, so when I'm speaking, I look for the me's in the audience, and I get really flustered when I'm on a Zoom and people refuse to turn their cameras on, or when I'm in a crowd where everybody's got that resting face, because like, my resting face is pretty friendly, I like to think. And some people's resting faces just look like I perceive it as, you don't want to listen to me, but you're too polite to get up and leave the room. So how do you, I don't know, how do you manage reading people when you're on stage?
That's a great question. Yeah, you'll get a lot of this. People looking at their phones. Now, the good news is, if you notice that they're distracted or they have devices in their hand, that's when you turn it into a moment where you can engage them. So my quick answer to that is there some way you can engage them? Understanding that not all audiences want to be in the seats, depending on what market you support and you serve. I sometimes work with corporate clients. Most often, corporate clients are there because they want to be, but sometimes they're earning points or credit for showing up and they're multitasking at the same time, or they have their cameras off. So I like to check in with, okay, what will get them to engage? And usually before I deliver a program, I check in with the event organizer and I say, okay, what is typical for this group? So for my corporate clients, I'll say, do they usually go off camera? What can they respond? If it's a smaller group, can they unmute themselves? And so can we have an exchange? I always include some sort of polling survey questions or something that will at least get their fingers all warmed up, because, you know, in our digital world, we know where fingers are moving anyway.
Yep.
So how can you leverage that? And in a live situation, it's often getting people to move with you.
Ooh, talk about that.
Yeah, so especially if you're doing a keynote type presentation where they're just listening to you, lectures are boring. Our average, you know, attention span is probably 10 minutes or less. So you have a lot stacked against you as a speaker. The more you can get people on their feet or making some sort of physical connection. So I've had techniques like clap your hands if you agree with this statement, or raise your hand. I don't do that as much because people don't want to feel like seen necessarily in a group of people, so I would use that less frequently. But stand on your feet if this is true, stomp your feet if this is true. So usually they're rhetorical types of questions or yes or no questions, because you can't always engage a big room of people, but you can always get people to take some sort of action. Take out your phone and take a picture of the QR code on the screen that I've saved for you that will give you my free offer. You could also facilitate breakout type sessions or partner work, which are often called dyads, in a live audience, especially if you do more intimate kinds of retreat speaking. Have them do work with a partner or turn to a partner and share a thought or a takeaway, how they're feeling right now. There are many ways you can engage your audience. That is the best way to make sure that they are with you. You know, there is a way for them to respond to you. Make sure it's appropriate to the platform you're using. I have been on recorded webinars where, you know, 20% of the registrants did not show up, and this is common. So make sure that you address the people watching the recording as well. That's a really important point. If there's going to be a recording and it's going to be staying up in a membership platform, don't forget your replay people. Make sure you can engage with them in some way. Like if you offered something, say, just email me. Make it easy for them, because they're going to have more roadblocks in terms of engaging with you because they didn't see you live. They can't interact with you as you're asking these questions. So just some things to consider.
Yeah, no, that's really a good point. And I'm thinking back to all of the pre-recorded sessions that I've seen. And you're right. Some people have done a really good job of engaging me. And I feel like, oh, I'm live. And sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm not really here and I'm not important. And if I don't feel like I'm important, then is it worth my time to watch this? So, can you talk about that for a minute, about making your audience feel important as you're speaking? Is that something you think about?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Everything that I do as a speaker has to go back to them at some point. And so here's where research will be your friend. I'm a big data nerd. I used to massage thousands of lines of Excel data every day in my job. So I love, the more data, the better, the more feedback, the better. And I'm a coach, so I lean on feedback all of the time. Often when I'm engaging with someone to talk about bringing a program to them, I ask really good questions on the front end. Like, what does the audience look like? What are the problems in this industry? If I didn't already research that or have a handle on what that looks like, I talk to the organizer ahead of time. That's part of doing really good research. And these are topics I love diving into, and I offer quarterly masterclasses on. So if you're curious about that, reach out to me and connect with me, because I will have another one coming up in March that I'd be happy to send you a personal invitation to. But it's important to do really good research on the front end. In terms of how to serve them in the actual event that you're speaking at. Now, there's some things you can do depending on if it's a live event or a recorded event. So if it's a live event, you can show up early. You can do VIP networking with them, or happy hour the day before the event, or arrive early. Like, I'm talking 2 hours early, if it's not like 5 a.m. in the morning or something like that. Arrive as early as you can, make sure that the technology is out of the way, but then go and meet and greet your people who are showing up for you, even if you've never met them before. Establish some sort of connection with them.
Mhm.
And the last part has to do with your actual speech content. Now, when I work with clients, we always start with your end in mind, which is a little bit different than journaling, isn't it? Because you kind of just show up with whatever you have. If you do that as a speaker, it's not going to go well for you. You have to show up understanding what you're inviting your folks to at the end of your presentation. And you may be thinking, well, that sounds really salesy, Jen, or that sounds really pitchy. I don't know about that. It's not about a sales pitch. It's not about that. But you're leaving your audience with either a thought or an action that you're encouraging them to consider if they're ready for the challenge. And if you leave them with nothing to do with that information or that action, what were you doing up there? You know, what value did you add to that person's life? So when we're structuring your signature speech, and I have a template for that, which we'll share in just a moment, but I walk you through engagement ideas, structure of your speech, but your organization of your speech is going to be the critical way to really tell the audience how important they are to you. So even though I was sharing my personal story for many years of losing weight, it was never about me. It was about my audience. So I might have had certain lessons and certain things I did, but then I would turn it back to the audience and have them reflect on what part of that would be useful for them. So it's part speaking, part coaching in a way, but that's why I feel that coaches make the best speakers, because you already have the skill set you need. And that's how you can really let the audience know that you're not up there because you just want to do all this. That's fun, but that's not why you're there. You want them to have something that improves their life.
It is so obvious when you listen to somebody speak, if they have that attitude, if they are here to genuinely help other people, or if they just really like the sound of their own voice. And I think it's okay for it to be both. You can like the sound of your own voice, but also be there to help the people that you're speaking to.
Fun fact, Amanda, most speakers, like speakers I know, speakers in the network, are introverts, and I count myself as an introvert as well. So we get drained a little bit from interacting and networking, connecting. I love connecting with people, but I need to recover and rest after doing a big event. So introverts are there because they have something important on their heart that they need to share. So like you said, Amanda, you can tell those speakers that are up there, they're all charisma, they're all flash and dash and hype and download this and download that. It's great. They have something of value to offer. I'm not demeaning them, and every speaker shows up differently. But I also feel that there's a place for those speakers who are quieter, who are more intuitive or more introverted. There's a stage for everyone, in my opinion. And it's just a matter of finding the right stage for you, because sometimes when we think about the stage, your name up in lights, your walk-up music, all of these fun flash and dash and big TV screens, that's not the vision for everyone. So I love to start with your vision around what speaking looks like for you.
Yeah. So before we go on, I want to point out that on the stage there, or on the screen, is the link to that signature speech template. Can you talk about that for just a minute while I have it up?
Awesome. Thank you for pulling that up.
Yeah.
So this is the signature speech template. It is starting with your goals as a speaker in mind. And Mariah shared a little bit about, she's going to think about engaging her people who are watching recordings. I love it, Mariah. Thank you so much. When it comes to structuring your speech, the signature speech template will get you started. So we start with, what goals are you looking to do with your speaking? I work with clients who want to get paid to speak, and that's that. Or clients who speak for free, but they want to invite people to their books, their courses, their programs, whatever the case may be. And I have some people who want to do both. So I work with you whatever stage you're at or whatever your goals are, but we start with that first, because then we can get more intentional about the next steps. We take a look at the organization of your speech, and I do give you a format for that. It's not chronological. So if you're like, I'm going to write, first I was born, David Copperfield, and then this happened, and then that's not how you write a signature speech. I'm sorry to say, it takes a little more than that, and it takes a lot of reorganization. I know reorg is sometimes a dirty word, but that's what you'll get in the template. And then there's also different ideas for engagement. Again, it depends on if you're virtual or live, but we talked about some of them today and we didn't cover all of them. So if you're curious, I would suggest you go take a look at the template. It's a free resource, and then you'll automatically get invited to my master classes if you're interested in how to find those speaking engagements.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. So while you were talking about that, I heard so much in common with what I always say about journaling. I heard that there's no one size fits all when it comes to speaking. I think everyone who's listening has probably heard me say that a whole bunch of times, that there's no one size fits all here. And I love saying that because as someone who's not quite 5 feet tall, like, nothing ever fits. So, like, one size fits all is such a misnomer. So, can you talk about there's a stage for everybody? And like, what does that mean? What does it look like? How do we know what stage is for us?
That's a great question. So first of all, let's take a look at the spectrum of stages, because there is quite a wide variety of stages. You have everything from a conference room in a company where you're speaking to C-suite executives versus a midlife women's transformation retreat next to a lake. So those are different spectrums of stages. And then you have everything from cruise ship speaking to virtual online summits catering to business owners, to affiliate opportunities where you're kind of doing a list swap of your different free gifts or low cost offers, to signing books at the back of a bookstore in your local area. So all of those are stages. And when it comes to choosing the right stage for you, there's some elements that go into that, of course, like location. Are you willing to travel? I'm not a big traveler. Like, I love traveling, but I travel for pleasure, not necessarily business. If I'm traveling for business, it has to be like a perfect fit for me. And that means the audience, the topic, the group. Are there opportunities for me to get spin-off referral business from this opportunity? Then yeah, I'll travel. And if they cover some minimum costs for me, I will definitely travel. So looking at, do you want to travel? What does that look like? Do you want them to cover all of your costs and pay you? Because there are lower budgets for certain events than others. Those are some considerations to think about. And then in terms of stages, there are plenty of free speaking opportunities. So if you've decided that's your model, we can definitely work with that. Just know that you're speaking to usually more general audiences with people who may or may not be interested in working with you ever, because they may not be your target market. So there's pros and cons to different stages. And then there's stages that you pay for, but they're in front of your perfect people who are ready to buy because they are a captive audience and they love the event. They love the people who are speaking there. They are ready to purchase something that will help them move the needle for them. So, there's a place for all of those types of speaking opportunities. But first we have to start with, okay, what are you looking for? And what are your must-haves and what are your nice-to-haves? And once we figured all that out, then we'll find the stage for you.
I love that. And I love how there's a way forward for everybody. So let's go back to your journals since you you did bring them. How
Yay.
talk a little bit, if you would, about journaling and how that helps you really be more confident on stage.
Okay, so I was telling you before we got live on the live stream here, this is one of my favorite journals from 2018. So this is going quite a few years back. And I like this journal because it has transference paper. So it has like a white page and then it has a blue page. So it copies what you're writing down and you can tear out the pages. And this is just one example of a journal, but I'm also like a huge planner. So I'm like, okay, I need to have my 3 years ahead of, of what I'm doing. When I book a speaking engagement, I'll put it in my monthly calendar. So that way I have an at a glance. And before I booked it, I have a different place I organize it. So one of the most important things you'll know as you're starting to find speaking engagements for yourself, Organization is going to be really important. And I know, Amanda, you walk people through different types of journaling, including how you organize your thoughts, how you organize habits you're tracking. The same is true for speaking. You're going to have to organize both the research you're doing on potential speaking opportunities, what you're submitting for that opportunity, because it might be different. They might be asking for certain information that other applications are not looking for. If you're confirmed or you have an interview ahead of time, what do you need to know to prep for that interview? I would put that in one of my journals. This is the name of the company. This is what we've done so far. This is what I'm going to pitch or propose to them. And then just in terms of awareness, one of my biggest goals over the past year was increasing my intuitive connection with my audience. And it's difficult when it's virtual. I've done a lot of virtual speaking, and it's still difficult to connect with people one-to-one, even though we're looking at each other directly. So I use my journal to take the journey with my audience. I visualize what I want that speaking engagement to look like. Yes, even before I've booked the speaking engagement, my journal helps me with that because I can write that vision out. After I've had the vision, I've done the meditation, I can write that vision out. Also, sometimes, especially if you feel calmed and centered when you journal, I will sometimes do mantras like affirmations or maybe even journal prompts around speaking. One of my favorites is the audience hears exactly what they need to hear. And I will sometimes state that out loud if I'm driving to a speaking engagement, because again, we can't control how our audience reacts to us, but we can be certain that what we're delivering has impact. So I like to use that mantra. So a variety of ways that journaling can support me. And just one last thing I'd like to share around that is when it comes to speaking, we focus very heavily on the content, right? I've got to add value. I've got to add value. I've got to stuff all this education into it. What I would encourage you to consider instead is, what emotional connection do you want to have with what you're delivering? And I know one of the best things I do when I'm having a tough day or I'm going through my feels is I turn to my journal. It starts with awareness of what's going on with you before you can recognize it within your audience.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you shared that, because so many of us um, feel so many things and think so many things, but then we're not comfortable enough to take a look at what we're thinking and feeling. So getting confident and just connecting with ourselves, so important. Because yeah, you're right. If we can't recognize how we're feeling, how are we going to recognize that in somebody else? Yeah, beautifully put, Jen. So,
Thank you.
if people want to know more about you and how to work with you, can you tell us some of what you offer, who you work with, how you work with them?
Mhm. So I help you in two ways. I help you with the creation and the choosing of your signature speech. We talked about sticking to a lane, right? Well, that's a tough work to do. I can work with you on that one-to-one. So I work privately with people. And then I also help you through the entire genesis of that speech, the creation, the writing. If you're using slides, what does that look like? I help you determine the audience for that. And there's many different ways you could go with that, and I help you deliver the speech. So even if you're comfortable with delivering previous speeches, my goal for you is to make your signature speech something that you can do in your sleep if you need to. So that takes rehearsal, and sometimes we don't rehearse when it's on our own. I help you through all of those phases, but it doesn't end there. Most other speaker coaches only helps you with the speech. And that's great, if you have a beautiful speech that you're ready to deliver at the drop of a hat. But what do you do then? Like, how do you find these speaking engagements? Because there's a million of them, but until you've started looking for them, you won't see a single one of them. And you'll be just so frustrated. I was really frustrated in my first few years of business. So I help you find the stages, and I help you find stages that are appropriate for your business model, the type of speaking you do, and the type of people you want to connect with. Now, that takes a lot of thought because you have to not just show up and deliver a great program. I have certainly delivered the wrong program to the right people, and the right program to the wrong people. I mean, trial and error as you're figuring things out. So I help you with both sides of it, the speech itself, the creation, the delivery, as well as finding the stages to take that speech to so you can make the biggest impact possible for what you're looking to do. And I do this mostly through private coaching. But I did mention earlier that I offer classes. So if you're not ready to jump right in and say, Jen, let's dive deep, my master classes are the best way to connect with me. And the next one is in March. I used to run them quarterly, but this year I decided to run them every other month. And usually they're around topics of the different markets you can book speaking engagements in. I also do how to fill your calendar with speaking engagements, whether they're paid or unpaid. It doesn't really matter. I can serve you no matter what level you're looking at. And once in a while, I'll run like an intensive, immersive weekend experience where I'll give you the entire thing, the whole enchilada in 2 full days. It's been a great experience. It's called Speaker Launch. So those are some of the different ways I can support you. And Amanda, I see that you've pulled my website up there. Funny enough, I do not have those offers on my website. So if you're interested in connecting with me, please find me on LinkedIn or message me and let me know whether you're interested in just scheduling a free consultation.
Awesome. Oh, I love that. And I love how you hold our hands through the whole thing. That's really what I'm picturing. It's not just like, here's your speech, go. That really, I love all of the support that you give your clients throughout and afterwards as well. I think that's so beautiful and so needed.
And one thing, I love the work that I do, Amanda, and I will say too that I'm not going to just give you a template and say, figure it out. I paved the way for you. Now you figure it out. As a coach, I co-create with you, which means I'm giving you feedback. I'm giving you insights. I'm giving you advice. But more than that, I'm helping you center and ground in what's important to you, because it's not about me. You're my audience. It's about you. It was always about you. So I want to make sure that I'm showing up fully for you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And I think we will end on that note. So, Jenn, thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise. Thank you to Mary and Mariah and everyone else who tuned in. We are so glad that you were with us tonight and look forward to seeing you again next time.
Bye.